not against medicine. I'm not against medicine, therefore, but also I'm not in favour of distributing it for every reason under the sun. It is not the cure to all problems. It is a cure to some problems, you understand? But it is not the cure to all problems. The cure to most problems is human intervention. The intervention of oneself is the cure to most problems. Most people are quite capable of curing themselves. Most people in your world now, in recent years and certainly in recent decades, have truly suffered in the mind. Their minds have suffered. Their minds have become unwell. You understand? They have suffered with mental illnesses of the mind. But most of these illnesses of the mind are somewhat questionable, because you must look for the cause of the illness. Illnesses to be monitored have a cause, always have a cause. If all illnesses have a cause, then what is the present illness of the mind, which is so rampant amongst those in your world right now? And not only right now, but going way back. What is the cause, the common denominator, that truly has triggered within humanity the sickness of the mind which now prevails over so many? What is the common denominator, the cause, the root reason? Beg you all to consider this, that most of the causes that run through your mind, through the sickness of the mind issue within your world, stems from the continuous exposure, the continuous pumping action from cradle to grave of information overload in people, and the adherence to rules and the obeying of the structure of systems, system structure enforcement throughout your lives. When in years gone by, one, such as myself, went through education, we handled far less information than one who is at the school, in a school now. You understand?
Yeah.
The information quantity that was expected of myself to absorb, learn, process, and repeat, and learn and repeat with accuracy, was considerably less than the information now of a child of the same age. Year upon year, week upon week, day by day, young children, their minds are forced, full of information, full of rule, full of regulation, full of obedience to and obedience to information, rules to follow and obey, processes. So many, and that does never cease. It never ceases. It continues all through your lives, where you are expected to continue to absorb at a rate and at a speed which is most unnatural. I would like you to try to consider what I'm trying to impart to you tonight, my friends, because right now in your world, and for the last, for many decades in your world, but certainly in more recent times, there is an urging and a pressure upon the young, upon what you would term the middle-aged people, and what you would call the elderly people, to absorb information at a rate which is greater than what people should be absorbing information by. By this, I mean your children are being forced. Their minds are being crammed with information. rules to obey, what you should and should not do. They are being crammed into the mind of the young. The middle-aged person, or should we say those who are a little older, moving into through the middle years of their life, as you would call it, as I would have called it, but I don't see it as that anymore. I don't see middle, but for your benefit, that's how I word it. I understand you know what I mean by middle age. Even those people are being forced to obey, learn, understand things, accept things that go beyond their understanding. That their minds have got to learn to understand and process quicker, because you must do such. You must do this, or you must do that. You must obey. You must follow this rule, that rule. Now we change the rules for you. The rules will change on this date or that date. Now you need to pay more money for this. Now you need to pay more money for that. The process for this is changed to a new process. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes. Definitely.
These very actions, my friends, accumulate. They accumulate, and there are so many of them. I believe you go onto what you call your computer, and you have to put a word in that only you know in order to use the process of the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to remember this, you have to remember that. You have to remember how to do something within the computer. You buy a new piece of technology. You don't buy it, you have it enforced upon you. You have to remember this, remember that. You understand?
Mm.
Your world now is a constant bombardment from all areas of your society to remember, to learn, to process. Your minds are being forced to expand faster than they would normally be capable of doing. People in your world, some people, are quite literally crashing. Their minds, their memories, the process of their body is crashing under the weight of constant process, procedure. Your world is being bombarded. You are all being bombarded with information overload, to the point where your minds, when I say your minds, I do not mean literally you in the room, but I speak as the whole. The minds of many people are struggling to maintain the speed of change. When people ask the question, why is the health of the mind suffering so much in recent times, and certainly within the last decade or two in your world, why are so many people moving and taking their own lives? Why are so many people sick in the mind? Because their minds, believe it or not, are struggling to keep up. Like a computer, which cannot process anymore, that cannot handle the information, the data coming in. It has no choice but to stop and to stand still and crash. These are words of your time, I believe.
Yes.
So I'm told. Your world, the minds of many in your world, more and more, are crashing because they cannot keep up with the speed and quantity of information being enforced upon them as rule, regulation, procedure. So when people talk about sickness of the mind, the result is always to take a pill given to you by one of your health specialists. The result is always to take a pill. To cure the problem, you must take the medicine. When in fact, sickness of the mind, you call it depression, anxiety, are nothing more than symptoms arising from the bodies of the people in your world through information overload. You are overloading on information. It is engulfing so many of you. How you process that information and whether you bother processing that information is the deciding factor as to whether you crash or continue. For some people, they cannot keep up with the process. They cannot deal with that process. They cannot compute, for want of a word. And therefore, they freeze and they crash. That, my friends, is your mental health problem in your world right now. The mental health and well-being of the people would be improved greatly if they ceased trying to absorb one half of the information that they are being forced to receive. If they were to cease to compute one half of the data that is being forced and crammed within their minds. The child of your world today remembers and must retain 5 times, maybe 10 times, I don't know, the amount of information that one of when I was the same age would have to retain and process. I could spell, read, write and count at a very young age. Most of us could, because we focused on fewer pieces of information to be processed. We processed less of it. The people in your world now are children engulfed, being used as computer software, being forced to retain so much information, most of it bloody awful and useless. But why? Why would this be so? Why do they do this? Why is this being performed? Why force all of this information upon children and young adults? And it doesn't end there, because the older people are not used to it, but they are being forced also to retain, process. They're being forced to process information that makes no sense to them, dragging them, kicking and screaming, into what some call the modern world, against their will. And that also creates anxiety, fear, worry, concern, and ultimately, as their minds are no longer perhaps as sponge-like to absorb as they once were, so they worry anxiously, and so do they crash and pause. Yes, your world is being force-fed data into your minds, into your memory banks. Yes. You understand what I'm trying to put across to you, all my friends?
Yes,
Yes,
definitely.
thank
Now, why would they do that? Why would they try to cram and force so much, I call it data, into your mind? Why would they do such a thing? A crashed mind, as I will call it, tonight. A crushed mind, a mind which is frozen and struggling to make clear decisions, is a susceptible mind, susceptible to suggestion, susceptible to more obedience.
And to replace human individuality with artificial intelligence.
In order to get the artificial intelligence, my friends, to compute with your mind, your memories need to be expanded to create space. Does that make sense?
Yes.
In order to make the space, you must pack out the memory to create space. And that's what's happening to you all. You are being bombarded with so much information. None of it expanding your mind in a spiritual sense, but stretching your mind to capacity through useless information. Almost like cramming a sock with stuffing and keep forcing it in more and more. When the stomach says it's full, but cramming more and more and more in and never stopping, eventually the body will expand quite unhealthily, but it will expand. The stomach will stretch and stretch and stretch until eventually it has capacity to retain however much you want to put in. You understand that?
Yeah.
So your minds are being stretched unhealthily. Your minds are being forced from a young age. Those who crash and those who burn right now, those whose minds literally freeze up and cannot process now, they are not weak people. Quite far from it. If somebody in your world right now is struggling mentally, is struggling to process what they are living with and through, because they cannot handle the information overload that is being forced upon them, those people are anything but weak, my friends. They are demonstrating the strength, true strength. Their minds are not stretching. Their minds are incapable of stretching any further, any faster than it already is. They are demonstrating that they are truly human in all senses of the word. They are showing you the process of the world around you. The world around you is reflected in how these people's minds are freezing up. Their minds are telling them, can't take any more, enough, slow down, in a world which is refusing to slow down, with people who are obsessed with absorbing nonsense, all of it, into their minds. Many people will freeze. Many people's minds will freeze. So when I ask, what is the cure to the mental problem and condition of humanity right now, there is no tablet that can stop that kind of illness. No tablet will cure that. The true cure, my friends, is to cease listening, is to cease absorbing it, is to cease believing it. Because the root for everybody at some point is that they want you all to freeze. They want your minds to crash. In your world's language of today, to crash and burn. They want to stretch your mind like an overfed stomach so that the capacity to absorb that which comes later is possible. Does that make sense?
Yes, it certainly does.
Yes.
Where we are facing a world where powers that control us have emphasis on the retention of knowledge,
Yes.
in opposition to knowing, the difference between knowledge and knowing. Do you get what I mean by that?
We've always lived in a world where others teach you,
Yeah,
where others tell you.
But what you know, I mean, to know,
Yes.
as opposed to retain facts,
Yes.
it's a completely different thing.
Well, of course, one is intuitive and one is enforced. One is your intuition, always your intuition. And one is always enforced upon you by others.
Yes.
Whether it's your father or mother, your brother, your sister, your children telling you you're wrong, your teacher, your boss at work, whoever. One is intuitive, the other is enforced.
Yeah.
That is the only difference. Intuitiveness exists within all, but it is a much quieter sound. It is a much, much quieter voice. But you live in a world where you're being overfed mentally. Overfed mentally. They are cramming you, stuffing you, full of information, left, right and centre. Some of it true, some of it not, some of it totally barbaric, on all sides. And people in your world are suffering with the mental condition now. A condition which, when your mind cannot absorb any more, when it has reached point full, yes, and it can't take any more, like the computer of your world, which will cease to be able to process and it will stop working for a while. That is what is happening now to the people. That is why your mental health conditions are so bad. That is why and it is not a sign of weakness. Anybody who sees it as a sign of weakness is missing the point entirely. It is the correct process of a truly wonderful creation, which is your body and your brain. It is saying no more, cannot compute, cannot handle, slow down, stop, allow me to rest. That is not weakness. But of course, those who are susceptible and being crammed with more and more and more will remind those people to pull themselves together. You must do this, you must do that, you must obey this, you can't do that, you can't do this. Do you not care for others? Do you not care for yourself? You must, and so they do, and they try, and then they can do no more. They cannot go any further. They cannot process or compute. Their mind has no choice but to stop, to send out the message that it cannot. And that, my friends, is what you call mental illness in your world right now. And I can assure you the true cure, yes, a tablet can override and bypass the program of your body. This is true. And it can mask the problem, but it doesn't cure the problem. Yes, talking can alleviate the backup and pressure and allow you to declutter your mind a little, to make a little more room, to give you breathing space, and it is important. The counselling of the world is truly important. But the true cure to the disease is to cease absorbing the information, is to cease behaving like some kind of computer for them to stuff full of useless data.